Anytime
And
you're
I
ready.
do this because I think that, again, we've made another mistake with our policy. And with respect to this, it has to do with the other Ford and the mayor and his, I guess, ability to get donations to cover the costs for football players in playing football. And we have come to determine that the way he has collected money was broken the policy.
Actually, today's report, through you, Mr. Speaker, is not for that purpose. That was determined by Council in August of 2010. This is rather a housekeeping matter.
Okay.
The decision by Council has not yet been carried out, and it's become rather time sensitive because there is a need for some of the lobbyists who made the donations to be reimbursed so that they can resume their lobbying activities of the mayor. So
Still a part of that, though. It was still a part of that complaint.
it flows from that complaint and Council's decision. That's correct, Council.
So now we have some individuals and I guess companies. I haven't seen the list, but
The list is attached to the original report.
I haven't read the list because I didn't get that far. I didn't read the list. But I do want to say this to you. We now have expected those donators to that children's program not to speak to councillors or the mayor or until that money's paid back?
I've asked the lobbyist registrar to be here to respond to any of the advice, because that was advice given by the lobbyist registrar once it became clear that the mayor had corresponded with the donors and had not yet repaid them. It may be that I need to defer to her on the question of that advice, but I can tell you that advice was given by the lobbyist registrar, because until they are reimbursed, they're in the position of having provided a favor or a benefit.
Are all of them lobbyists or are some of them companies?
The list is attached. Most are lobbyists, some are clients of lobbyists, some are in-house lobbyists, and one is a company that council determined, because it received contracts, should not have been asked to give donations.
Where was the actual breach itself?
The breach itself is that when Mayor Ford, then Councillor Ford, solicited donations to his named charity from lobbyists and client lobbyists, that he was using the influence of his office to obtain a favor or a benefit.
Okay.
Council directed him to repay the donations.
But hang on. A favor or benefit that favors him or favors children?
That favors him.
Okay. Elaborate on that then.
It was found to have favored him because it was subsequently used as part of his election campaign. It was highlighted on his website, and so that the connection is made between the request for a direct favor, a provision of the favor or benefit back to him in the form of political credibility, if you like, and council found that to be a breach of the code of conduct.
So if a councillor in the future holds a fundraiser and sends out a letter suggesting that people donate to that particular charity in their ward or that particular school or that particular CSAC or whatever that might be, we would not be allowed then, based on what's happening here and the precedent that I see, to advertise what we've been able to do for the community for that charity.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, every community involvement a councillor has will depend on the precise facts. So I'm going to be careful not to respond to a hypothetical and say that for all time you cannot be involved in fundraising or charitable matters. But what has to happen, and it's very clear, is that councillors need to separate out their private interests from their public position. And they have to be very careful, and you know that the community donation policy says that you can't have community events and accept funds from lobbyists. And the reason is it's to try to keep the boundaries between the gifts and benefits provisions and lobbyists and publicly elected officials, because lobbyists are often coming to you asking for things.
So in other words, and I'll ask again, councillors cannot, in your opinion, go out and ask anyone to donate for a charity within their wards. And then a charity within their wards or a group within their ward, and if anybody that happens to be doing business with the City of Toronto donates to them, we'd be found in, we'd be found to be in violation of that particular policy.
Again, it would depend on.
Last question.
It would depend on who's doing the asking, how they're doing the asking, what's the amount, who's involved. I appreciate that. It would depend on the facts, and I'm not going to say for all time you cannot support charities, but the devil is always in the details, Councillor. So in this case, on these facts, that's what Council found.
Thank you, Councillor Mammoliti. Councillor Fillion.
Yes, thank you. Did you make these rules or did council?
Council made these rules.
And these rules came about, I think, after the Bellamy inquiry?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fillion. No other questioners are on the list.